Today I'll tell you 3 stories that prove not even Christmas is safe from darkness. From crimes that defy all logic to disappearances that decades later still have no answers. These are the stories that stained Christmas forever. For our first story, we travel to rural North Carolina in the late 1920s. These were tough times. The Great Depression was about to hit, but in farming communities, life went on. In Stokes County lived the Lawson family: Charlie, his wife Fanny, and their 7 children. Charlie Lawson was a tobacco farmer. His neighbours described him as a hard-working man and a good father, though he was also known for being quiet and having a temper that could sometimes be quite severe. Despite the tough economy, the Lawsons had managed to save enough to buy their own farm, which showed Charlie's persistence. As Christmas of 1929 got closer, Charlie did something no one expected. He took his whole family to town and bought them new, fancy clothes, a huge expense for that time. Soon after, he gathered them for a family photo. That picture would, in time, become a grim symbol, the last image of the Lawsons together. In it, they look serious, almost solemn, posing in their best clothes. Looking at the photo today, it's impossible not to feel a shiver, thinking that the man who arranged that memory was about to become the killer of his own family. The morning of December 25th arrived with a biting cold. Charlie woke up much earlier than the others. While Fanny, his wife, started preparing the Christmas cake, their daughters Carrie, 12, and Maybelle, 7, went out to visit some nearby aunts and uncles. Charlie was waiting for them, hidden in the tobacco barn. When the girls got close, he shot them at close range with a shotgun. Then he dragged their bodies inside the barn and made sure they were dead by beating them badly. With a chilling calm, Charlie went back to the house. Fanny was on the porch. When she saw him, she probably didn't feel fear, but confusion. He shot her without saying a word. The shot alerted their 17-year-old daughter Marie, who was inside. Charlie went in and killed her too. Then he went for his youngest children, James, 4, and Raymond, 2. He beat them to death. The last to die was the baby, Mary Lou, just 4 months old. After killing almost his entire family, he arranged the bodies inside the house in a way that was almost like a ceremony. He crossed his children's arms over their chests and placed stones under their heads like pillows. Then he simply walked into the woods. Hours later, the unnatural silence of the farm alerted the neighbours. What they found was a nightmare scene. News spread quickly and a search was organised to find Charlie. The search ended when a final gunshot was heard in the woods. Police found Charlie's body. He had taken his own life. Near him were letters to his parents, but they offered no explanation. The reason for the massacre died with him. The only surviving son, Arthur, who had left home before dawn, became the sole heir to the farm. The mystery about Charlie's reasons has led to all kinds of theories. The most common and darkest one suggests a terrible secret, a possible incest between Charlie and his oldest daughter Marie. Some rumours from that time, even from family members, said that Marie might have been pregnant with her own father's child. According to this theory, Charlie, terrified that the secret would come out, decided to wipe out everyone. Others guess that a head injury he got months before might have caused a big change in his personality. We'll never know for sure. What is a fact is what happened next, which is almost as disturbing as the crime itself. The Lawson farm, instead of being a place of sadness, became a tourist attraction. Charlie's brother, with permission from the only survivor, opened the house to the public. charging admission for curious people to see the crime scene. Even the Christmas cake Fanny was making was displayed in a glass case, attracting thousands of people. Christmas of 1929 in Stokes County was not remembered for peace, but for the day a father decided to wipe his own family off the map. Now we go to a completely different kind of horror. Here there is no confirmed killer, but the pain of not knowing, a mystery that has consumed a family for over 70 years. We are on Christmas Eve of 1945 in Fayetteville, West Virginia, at the Sodder family home. George Sodder was an Italian immigrant with a successful trucking company. He was a man with strong opinions and very critical of the Italian dictator Benito Mussolini, a stance that didn't earn him many friends in the local immigrant community. In fact, it had made him some enemies. He, his wife Jenny, and their 9 children lived in a big, noisy house. In the months before that Christmas, several strange things happened. A man looking for work warned George, pointing to the fuse box, that one of these days this is going to cause a fire. Soon after, an insurance salesman got angry when George refused a policy and yelled at him, "Your damn house will go up in smoke, and your children will be destroyed." Also, the older children complained that a car was following them home from school. On Christmas Eve of 1945, the youngest children, excited for presents, asked their mother if they could stay up playing. Jenny agreed and went to bed with George and 4 of the children. The other 5, Maurice 14, Martha 12, Louis 9, Jenny 8, and Betty 5, stayed playing upstairs. Shortly after midnight, the phone rang. An unknown woman asked for someone Jenny didn't know, while in the background, laughter and the sound of glasses could be heard. Jenny hung up, thinking it was a wrong number. Around 1 in the morning, a loud thud on the roof woke her, followed by a sound like something rolling. She didn't think much of it. Half an hour later, the smell of smoke woke her up with a start. The house was on fire. It was total panic. George, Jenny, and 4 of their children managed to escape, but 5 were missing. The stairs leading to the upstairs bedrooms were already engulfed in flames. George ran outside to get the ladder that was always leaning against the house, but strangely, it wasn't there. Desperate, he tried to move one of his trucks closer to climb up, but neither of the 2 vehicles started, even though they had worked perfectly the day before. A neighbor tried to call the fire department, but the operator didn't answer. The phone line, as they would find out later, seemed to have been cut. The firefighters, whose station was only a few miles away, didn't arrive until 8 in the morning. By then, the house was just a pile of ashes. The fire chief told the family that the fire must have completely burned the bodies of the 5 children, and that the cause was faulty wiring. But something didn't sit right with George and Jenny. How could a 1-hour fire in a wooden house have completely destroyed 5 skeletons? Jenny started doing her own experiments by burning animal bones and found that there were always remains. The strange events came back to their minds. The threat, the missing ladder, the trucks that wouldn't start, the cut phone line. They were sure their children hadn't died but had been kidnapped, and the fire was a distraction. They hired a private investigator who found something unsettling. The fire chief claimed to have found what appeared to be a human organ in the ashes and secretly buried it in a box so as not to upset the family. When they dug up the box, it turned out to be a piece of beef liver that hadn't even been exposed to fire. Many believe he planted it to support the fire story. The Sodders offered a $10,000 reward and put up a giant billboard on the highway with photos of their 5 children. That billboard became a sad reminder of their hope and stayed there for over 40 years. Over the years, there were supposed sightings. One woman swore she saw the children in a car while the house was still burning. Another said she saw them in a hotel a week later with a group of Italian-looking adults. But the most confusing twist came in 1967. Jenny Sodder received a photo in the mail of a young man about 25 years old who looked amazingly like her son, Louis. On the back, a note said, "Louis Sodder, I love brother Frankie, Ilil boys, A90 Son 32 or 35E. Despite hiring another detective, they could never identify the young man in the photo or figure out the message. George and Jenny died without knowing what happened to their children. Were they victims of a tragic Christmas accident? Or were they kidnapped in an act of revenge while the fire served as a cruel distraction? The lack of answers has made this case one of the saddest and most disturbing stories in the United States. The story of the Sodder children is one that eats at you inside, precisely because of the lack of answers. Before we continue with the last story, which is perhaps the most terrifying of all, I want to pause. If these mysteries intrigue you and you want to support the channel so we can continue investigating cases like this, the best way to do it is by subscribing and turning on notifications. And now, I want to know what you think. Leave your theory about the Sodder children in the comments. Do you think they died in the fire or were kidnapped? I read everything you write. Our last story isn't a mystery lost in time. It's a modern and brutal horror that happened on Christmas Eve of 2008 in Covina, a suburb of Los Angeles. Bruce Jeffrey Pardo, 45, seemed like a normal guy. He was an engineer and volunteered at his church, but behind that facade, his life was falling apart. His divorce from Sylvia Ortega had just ended a week before Christmas and had been very difficult. He had lost his job, and the divorce settlement left him with a huge debt. He felt humiliated, betrayed, and furious. And that fury was about to explode. While his ex-wife's family prepared for their traditional Christmas Eve party, Bruce Pardo planned his revenge with terrifying detail. He rented a car, he built a homemade flamethrower, and he prepared 4 semi-automatic pistols with hundreds of bullets. But the most chilling detail was his disguise, a full Santa Claus suit to approach the house without raising suspicion. At 11:30 at night, the party at the Ortega house was in full swing. There were about 25 people, including children. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. An 8-year-old girl ran to open it, excited to see Santa Claus. But this Santa Claus didn't bring presents. In one hand, he carried what looked like a large package, which was actually the flamethrower. In the other, a pistol. As soon as the door opened, Pardo shot the girl in the face, seriously injuring her. Then he went in, shooting everyone who moved. It was absolute chaos. People screamed, ran, tried to hide while he moved methodically through the house. After the burst of gunfire, Pardo unleashed hell. He activated the flamethrower, spraying burning gasoline all over the living room. The house, full of Christmas decorations, became a death trap in seconds. The fire spread with explosive speed. Some managed to escape by breaking windows, jumping from a second floor. But many others were trapped. Pardo's plan was to flee to Canada. He already had a plane ticket. After the massacre, he took off the Santa Claus suit, which had melted onto his skin, causing third-degree burns, and drove to his brother's house. However, he didn't account for the severity of his own injuries. The pain was unbearable. Upon arriving and seeing that his brother wasn't there, Pardo changed his plan. He tampered with his rental car with a device so it would explode if anyone tried to move the remains of the suit. Then he went into the house, and with the same coldness with which he massacred 10 people, he shot himself in the head. When emergency services arrived at the Ortega house, the scene was apocalyptic. The house was a smoking ruin. In total, 9 people died that night, including his ex-wife Sylvia and her parents, Joseph and Alicia Ortega. The bodies were so charred that they had to identify them by dental records. The 8-year-old girl who received the first shot miraculously survived. The investigation showed Pardo's shocking planning. In his car, they found $17,000 in cash, his passport, and the plane ticket. He had planned to kill and disappear. His anger led him to commit an act of unimaginable cruelty, choosing the moment of greatest family joy to cause the most pain possible. The image of a Santa Claus spreading death became a terrifying symbol of how darkness can corrupt even the most innocent icon. The massacre of a family by their own father. The disappearance of 5 children in a fire full of doubts. A man dressed as Santa Claus who turns a party into hell. These 3 stories, though very different, remind us of something very unsettling. That Christmas, with all its light and promise of peace, is not a shield against the darkness of human nature. Pain, madness and violence do not respect the calendar. For the Lawson, Sodder and Ortega families, Christmas was never again a time of celebration. It became the anniversary of loss and horror. They are a reminder that the peace and security we often take for granted, especially during this time of year, are incredibly fragile. Thank you for joining me on this journey to the darker side of Christmas. If you know of other stories you think deserve to be told, leave them in the comments. Until next time.